So welcome to the next in our series of short video interviews where I ask what's next post-COVID-19. So today we are joined by David Blackburn, who is the Chief People Officer of the Financial Services Compensation Scheme. So hi, David.
Hi, Peter. Nice to see you.
And I gather you're homebound today in Richmond.
I am enjoying the sunshine.
Good. David, what I think would be good to start, if you give us a brief overview of your role with the organisation and your responsibilities so we get to know a little bit more about you.
Certainly. Yes, as you said, Peter, my name is David Blackburn. I am the Chief People Officer of the Financial Services Compensation Scheme, and I've been with the organisation for just over 7 years. In my role, my team and I have responsibility for the entire employee life cycle at FSCS, so from recruitment to onboarding, talent management, diversity and inclusion, facilities, health and safety, employee experience, learning and development, and total reward.
Excellent. Thank you, David. That's very helpful. So let's kick off with our first question. So this is our COVID-19 coming through the crisis and preparing for a better future. So what are your key present concerns and challenges for your employees and your organisation right now?
Peter, I think there are two main challenges for us as an organisation and concerns, which are less to do with, I think, where we are now and more to do with what happens next. So I think from an organisational perspective, obviously everyone will have seen the headlines around the financial impact that the crisis is already having and will continue to have. So we do have unprecedentedly high claims volumes that we're processing right now, and that I think is before the bow wave of the real impact. So I think, organisationally, that's a massive concern for us. What does COVID-19 mean in terms of claims volumes and potential financial failures in the year ahead? And how do we forecast for that in an environment that is so incredibly volatile and unknown? I think the second is, how do we respond to the incredibly diverse needs of our employees as we start to ease our way back into some sort of more normal working arrangements? The reality right now, of which we're incredibly proud, is the organisation was able to mobilise very, very quickly because of our historic investment in flexible working and technology. So we haven't furloughed any staff, we haven't lost a day's production, and in both employee engagement and customer satisfaction are at incredibly high levels. So right now the organisation is performing incredibly well. So I think it's more about the challenge of, what does the next step look like? We've established how we work remotely as an organisation very successfully. I think as we now start to move out of that into some sort of more hybrid model, I think that is a challenge against the backdrop of very high claims volumes.
Yeah, okay. So I kind of get that. In the industry you're in, it's been able to kind of continue to work because of technology and as you say, getting busier. And just quickly, David, then on that well-being piece around your employees working remotely and flexibly and just in these COVID times, how have you been tackling that?
So we've really done a lot of work around ensuring that our people continue to remain engaged and connected to the organisation, and we've done that in a whole host of different ways. Firstly, really by asking our employees directly what it is that they want. So we've run a series of non-anonymous pulse surveys, where we've asked people to really genuinely tell us how they're feeling and how, in what ways we could be supporting them more. We've had some really open conversations with our workforce, Q&A sessions live that I have hosted, where we've asked the question, When do you think we should be returning to the office environment? We have tried to replicate a lot of the things that have been lost through remote working. So virtual coffee breaks, virtual managers meetings, drop-in sessions. So not always something that's being facilitated by us, but just a slot in people's diaries that you can go along to a Teams call in the same way that you would bump into somebody in the kitchen or, chat to somebody at their desks. I mean, what's interesting, I think, from the Pulse surveys was that actually over time, so the scores were already pretty good, but actually over time the scores have gone up. But I think within that is, a massive variation. So when we ask the question, when do you think we should return to work? When should we go back to our offices in the city? Some people saying, can I come back? I'd come back tomorrow. And some people saying, never, 2025, 2021, and everything else in between. And so there is there's a real sense, to your point about well-being, I'm very struck by the anxiety that exists. I think people are very anxious, and not anxious necessarily about the response of us as the employer. I think they trust us to do the right things. It's more about, do I feel confident getting on public transport? Do I want to drive into work? Do I actually want to leave the home environment where actually I've now established a sort of new working pattern and I feel, I feel pretty safe and comfortable. So I think that is a really interesting landscape for us to start to navigate.
Yeah, I mean, this is the difficult part, isn't it? Is trying to, look at your entire workforce and your employees, and really everyone's different. Everyone's kind of dealing with this in a different way, and people have different needs and wants. And so, yeah, that's the bit, that's the tricky bit to get right. Okay, so that leads us quite nicely into sort of question 2 then, David. So this is really, and you're sort of talking a little bit about this now, but this is more about preparing for the business for this staged return. And really, what measures are you implementing to keep everyone safe? So I guess we're talking travel, office environment.
Yeah. So I think I think there's 5 key things that I think we're looking at. I think the first is around what have we learned thus far around our approach to flexible working. So we were already an organisation that had fully embraced flexible working, and 8 out of 9 people probably were already exercising some degree of flexibility in their day-to-day roles. I think now is really thinking about, and funny enough, actually, I was talking about it with my executive colleagues only this morning, is what does that start to look like in more concrete terms? Because my expectation, as it is, I think, with lots of HR directors, is that we will see an increase in the number of people working flexibly and the amount of time that they work flexibly. So I think we are probably likely to find for the first time people saying, can I just work from home permanently? Which isn't something that we've had before. So I think the first thing is really us deciding as an executive, what do the parameters look like within that new world? Does it matter if there aren't any people in the office, or doesn't it? Is it important for us to have teams physically in the building or not? So I think there's some really fundamental questions around flexible working, I think, is the first thing that we're grappling with. I think secondly, we want to ensure that we have a comprehensive well-being strategy for the whole organisation. We've done lots of work during this period. We have had a real focus on mental health. We have been providing virtually cardio combat classes, Pilates classes, yoga, meditation, online. Some of that run by some people in my own team, some of my own colleagues. I think actually we need to join all of those things together. So rather than that being a disparate set of activities, actually what is the well-being strategy? And equally, I think one of the things that we were talking about quite recently is, the crisis has potentially had a major financial impact on people. So actually, with people who have got anxiety around their financial well-being, what are we doing to support them in that space? I think thirdly, we need to invest, we need to rethink our approach to learning and development. A lot of what we're doing right now, I won't be alone in saying, we've got programs that we planned for this year, which pretty quickly over the last 3 months, we suddenly had to go, okay, well, that's got to become virtual workshops. And how do we do that? And how do we cut that content differently? But also, I think it's not just about how people utilize the technology. We've all had to learn to use lots of new technology during this period. But actually, I think, how do we support both colleagues and leaders to manage work remotely successfully? How do you, if you've got, as I talked about earlier, having hybrid teams, I think that's a really important thing. And I think our fourth point is really going, what new skills in this landscape, therefore, do people need? And lastly, and it sort of takes us full circle, if we have more people working remotely, if we have fewer people in the office, what is the office for? That's our sort of last, and what are we using our floor plate and our environment for? And I think it was on a Thehrdirector roundtable session that somebody asked, I attended recently, somebody said, I think that's a really good question. What is the office for? And if you are simply, leaving your desk at home to go and sit at a desk somewhere else, and that's its sole purpose, then I think organisations have been questioning, is that really what we need prime real estate in the centre of London to do? So how does the office look different? I think that's our sort of 5, aside from, if you go into our office building, right now, although rather frustratingly, given they're about to change it, there are 2-metre markers, throughout the building, and, we've completely changed, we've created one-way systems, we have reduced the density on the floor plate, we have physically removed furniture from all the meeting rooms and closed meeting rooms that are too small. The landlord of our building, we occupied a single floor in a building in central London. My temperature is now taken as you go into the building. So all of those measures, I think, are in place. We have said to our staff that we don't expect people to start returning until September, which I think gives us time to work our way through these sort of key questions that we need to get some answers to.
Yeah, I think September seems to be a date that I'm hearing quite a lot, which kind of makes sense. And I think, the 2-metre thing, the 1-metre thing, I mean, to some degree it's in place, so let's keep it that way, shall we, and ease it off as we go. So, yeah, okay, that's good. So, and just one other point on that then, I guess you've also got the, certainly the London office, you've got the public transport issues to deal with as well, which you're not in control of, and that becomes, I guess, a bit of a challenge and anxious for some people.
Yes, and I think, Peter, as I said, actually, I think that's the biggest anxiety. That's the number one. When I talk to our people, I think what people are talking about is, their commute, their journey to work. And for a lot of people, it's just not physically possible to reimagine that. It's not possible to cycle. It's not possible to walk. Our building, our office building, we operate in Zone 1. We're just behind Aldgate tube station, so it's not the easiest place to drive to. If you then get there, there's no, we've got 4 parking spaces in our building, for 200 staff. So I just think, that you're absolutely right. I think that's the biggest, really is the biggest anxiety when I talk to people about, I can't imagine, I won't feel safe, is what some people have said, until there's a vaccine. And, what does that mean for my journey into the office? So I definitely think that is going to be a big challenge, not just for us, but I think any firm operating in the city.
Yeah, absolutely. And until, I guess, they give some really assurances about how that's going to work, everyone's in the same boat, aren't they? Okay, good. So talking, so let's move on to question 3, which again you've alluded to some degree with some things, but this is probably the bigger picture ideas really. So what are the opportunities that you're exploring from the learning of the crisis? This is all about the learning journey, destination, the organization. Has that changed, and really how's that going to impact on you, your HR function, and your employees?
I think the question that our chief executive, Caroline Rainbird, has posed to the organisation about 6 weeks ago in one of her weekly messages was, how do we build back better? And, actually, to your point, what's the learning that we want to take away from this? So I think, the first one is that we can be fully productive as a remote organization, that we have absolutely demonstrated that. And I think that, definitely one of the positive legacies of this period is that it has been an accelerator of a whole host of different types of debates. And the number one debate is about flexible working. 6 months ago, I was attending a conference where I was a speaker, and the panel was discussing flexible working, and people were asking questions from the audience. How do I convince my organisation to invest in flexible working? How do I make flexible working a reality? How do I build the business case for flexible working? Well, that seems to be pretty redundant, given that we've all actually been doing it. So. I think that's a really positive thing. I think then the challenge, I think, is the culture of an organization is very much about the human interaction, the day-to-day human interaction. And so I think, from an HR perspective, how you continue to ensure that people are connected, engaged, and feel that sense of the organization. So, one of the things that we know at the FSCS is that our people are massively connected to the social purpose. They recognize that what we do, helping customers get back on track when their financial firm has failed, is hugely important, and they feel deeply motivated by that. So I think new ways. So I think, we have explored a plethora of new engagement channels and tools and techniques during the course of the lockdown. I think now it's sort of, and we're doing this piece of work right now, actually, we've just sent out a survey to staff to say, we introduced all of these things over the last 3 months. Which of these things do you think we should continue doing? Which things do you think we should stop doing? Because I think, like lots of organizations, and indeed as individuals, I think at the start, we were probably over communicating. So everyone was like, oh my God, we must have a huddle every day. We must do X, and I think now we've actually got into the rhythm. So we're asking ourselves, a lot of this stuff has worked really well. What things do we think have had the most impact? And also, I think that from an HR perspective, I think how we both support employees and leaders, because the landscape, the blurring of our data, our personal and our professional lives, has made us all incredibly much more intimately acquainted with everybody's everyday lives. I feel like I know my boss Caroline's children, personally, because of their many appearances on Zoom calls, and looking for snacks in the back of meetings, and so I just think equally, I think that's a positive thing. So I think that's a positive thing. I think, in a weird way, the distance, the requirement of social distance has actually brought us closer together. And so that's a different skill for leaders. I think, leaders suddenly, I think some of the stuff that we're talking about when, we ask each other, how are you feeling? How are you coping? Is a much more genuine conversation than perhaps we were having in the past. And I think that's a good thing. But I think that's not, for HR professionals, that might be a quite natural thing to do. it's not a natural thing to do, I think, for all leaders. So I think both going, how do you, the role that what we're asking of leaders, I think, in this new world is different, and requires a greater level of emotional intelligence and different types of skills. So I think how you help people do that successfully, I think, is a really important role for HR. I think the world is going to be, if the role of the office is going to be a social hub where we collaborate and we come together and we maintain our bonds and we reaffirm the culture of an organization. The role of HR in that is ever more important, I think.
Yeah, I think you make some really good points in terms of that flexible working piece is all about that home life and how that kind of fits in, isn't it? And so I think you're right, and I think this whole empathy piece is absolutely coming through. And as you say, leadership is going to need that in bags, which may not have been potentially there before. So okay, and just on the note of, I mean, you mentioned a little bit about obviously the demand on business going forward because of the negatives of what's coming out of COVID-19, the obvious type things. So just in terms of that overall journey, are you looking that far ahead as an organisation to say, other than these specific things, how it's kind of shaped you in the future?
Yeah, I mean, it is one of the challenges of the financial services compensation scheme is that we probably have the longest business planning cycle of any organisation known to man, for all manner of different reasons, because the PRA and the FCA approve our budgets and our business plans are consulted on with the wider financial services industry. We're starting business planning now. We start business planning in June for next April. So we have a very, very long process where we're almost never not thinking about the future. I think that, like most organizations, what we're saying to our board right now is we can tell you with a degree of certainty, and I'm saying that, with a big sort of, caveat of, huge pinch of salt, where do we think we want to be organizationally by the end of this financial year, March 2021. And I think starting and looking beyond that, I think is challenging, I'd say. I mean, it's a degree of the sort of best guess about it. I think that equally, if we're talking a lot about ensuring that we're focusing on the things that are important. So how do we have reevaluated our entire transformation portfolio and said, which of these activities can we repoint in service of our response to COVID-19? Which things do we think that we should stop doing? And equally, from an HR perspective, my observation to the board is that our working environment strategy, and underneath that I include all of the things we've just been talking about, the phased return, how we support leaders, what does training look like, that's massive. That in itself is massive. If that's just our focus for the rest of this year, then I think that's the right thing to focus on. And I think our primary responsibility always is to ensure that we're providing an outstanding service to our customers and that we are prepared for future failure. So I think those are the things that we're really focused on.
Yeah, I mean, I use the word the unknown quite a bit, and because it is, isn't it? So we're trying to kind of look at what the opportunities are and how that's going to look, and who knows at the moment. So it's interesting how it's developing. Okay, David, and finally, I always ask this one. You're going through this incredible time where I think HR is very critical in COVID-19 times. What's it like for you personally? Scary, frightening, exciting? How are you feeling about it all?
All of the above, Peter. I think, depending on which day you talk to me, I think it's very. I think it is very challenging for. I think it's challenging for everyone. I think it's particularly challenging for HR professionals, and I think that there is a there is a difficulty in being all things to all people, which is sort of what I have days where I feel, I am both counsellor, advisor, strategic thinker, planner, confidant, support, all of those things. So I think being expected to have the answers and helping the organization to navigate its way in, as you've just said, with so many unknowns, with so much of this completely uncharted, with so much of this new, I think that's a huge the burden of that responsibility. On a good day, it feels okay. I think on other days it's like, oh dear God, I need to lie down in a darkened room. And indeed, I did very early on. One day I did actually say to myself, I'm going to go have a lie down at 2:00 in the afternoon, and because I think that you do feel the weight of the responsibility of making sure that you're not making a misstep. I think that that being said, at the opposite end, it is exciting. It is exciting because I do think, as I said a bit earlier, if we were to take the positive away from it, it has accelerated a whole host of arguments and discussions. And I think we are, and I think the level of conversation that's going on in the HR community right now and business more widely about the future of work and the future of the office and the future of our working practices is genuinely exciting. I mean, it's really exciting. So it does feel a bit like a landmark, whilst the the catalyst has been something absolutely horrible and devastating. The potential for it to have a positive benefit on how we work, I think, is exciting. And the last thing I think I would say is that what I have found massively helpful and comforting is talking to other HR professionals. Is that the more you talk to other people, and I am very fortunate that I work for a relatively small organisation in a sector that hasn't had to make redundancies or furloughed, and I talk to other people who are sharing their challenges around mass redundancies, restructure, furloughed employees, the inability to work remotely. So it's great when when we talk to each other about not just about our challenges but about what we're learning as a profession. And I think that is actually that's good. It's good to talk, as they say.
Yeah, I concur with that. I mean, I think, the more we talk and share ideas, and I always say about senior HR is great at kind of, sharing it, as I like, warts and all. So we kind of really, the more we share, and it's, it is that kind of, we go back to that unknown, and you don't know all the answers, I don't know all the answers. We're kind of working through this as we go, aren't we? And then we've never had that. But I agree with you. The opportunities are incredible. It's such an exciting time. It's a challenging time, don't get me wrong, to be in HR, because we can reshape the way of work. We really can. And so I agree with you. I'm very buoyed by it all.
And Peter, can I just pick on one last thing that you just said there, because I think it's a really important point, because also I think that's something that's changed, not just for HR leadership, but for senior leaders. I think the level of honesty of being able to say, I don't have the answers, I don't know all the answers, and actually openly saying that, not just to each other, but to our own people. I think that's a really positive thing. I think, actually, if you want to build, high trust cultures, I think being really honest and just saying, and I think, one of the things I think we've done well at the FSCS, but I've noticed other leaders doing it, just saying, look, I actually don't know what the answer is. I just think creates a better dialogue. So I think that's a really important point that we've learned.
I agree, and again, the more people have an input, the more you can kind of sit as a team, and that's how it's going, isn't it? It's leadership team. It's a team environment. So, David, that's terrific. It was really good to speak to you today. I think, and as you say, I spoke to. When I've been talking to retail, and when you talk about furlough, 96% of staff furloughed at Waterstones, you know, so absolutely very industries. That's why I'm keen to talk to so many different ones, because they're all challenged in very different ways. David, thank you for your time. So just my quick ending, really. So join me next time when we talk to another senior HR leader about what's next post COVID-19. We're really looking at the new, better, and the opportunities. Thank you, David.
Pleasure. Thank you, Peter. Enjoy the rest of your day.